Strategy. There are so many people out there that I think misunderstand what business strategy is versus what it is not. What it is not is a list of tactics. For example, somebody might say, well, my business strategy is to make sure to keep my costs as low as possible. It's not a business strategy, that's a tactical decision. There's no framework in saying keep my costs as low as possible because how do you determine what a low cost is versus an appropriate cost? Now, a business strategy as a decision making framework should tell you what not to do as much as what to do. So, in other words, it's a way to answer that question, what is low cost? And because I talk about this stuff so much, I figured I'd share what my business strategy is to give you some context of how it is that we make decisions at the Leasix agency and how that impacts our lives. So, we have two evaporating clouds that drive our business strategy. I don't know that this is a clever name, but I call it the competing cloud. And what that basically means is I have a personal cloud and a business cloud. Now, I keep using that word cloud. What does it actually mean? Well, in the TOC world, we call this the evaporating cloud because what it does is it identifies a central conflict that makes it impossible for us to meet the necessary requirements to meet the goal. And I'll talk you through the logic of this here in a second. But the problem is that conflict in preventing us, or I should say, the way to resolve the conflict is to evaluate the assumption that is driving that conflict. And when you evaluate that assumption, you start to question whether or not I need X or Y, prerequisite X, prerequisite Y, in the way that I've originally interpreted it. So essentially, we make the conflict go away by using logic and understanding of our situation to come up with a solution that allows us to meet the necessary requirements to meet our goal. Now, from a logical perspective, this uses what's called sufficient or not sufficiency, necessity based logic. So, in other words, say, here's my goal. And in order to meet that goal, I must do this. And in order to do this, I must do this. Necessity based. So on the left hand side, you see my personal cloud. My goal is to be a present, happy father and husband. In order to be a present, happy father and husband, I must spend time with my wife and girls as much as possible. I must be here for them when they need me. And honestly, I must be with them when I need them. In order to also be a present, happy father, I must be creative. I must be productive. I must be doing something that inspires me in the way that I like to be inspired. In other words, I can't just work. That doesn't make me happy. I have to sit there and work with people. I have to create. I have to problem solve. The nature of my personality defines what creativity and productivity is. But either way, I have to be that. I have to do that. Now, in order to be present with my wife and girls, I must not be spending more time with anybody else than I need with them. So I must not be with anybody else. That is a prerequisite. I must be with them or I must be with somebody else. In order to be happy, or in other words, be creative and productive, I must spend time with other professionals. I must spend time working with people inside of the real estate industry. I must spend time with people in the communities that I'm a part of. And there is a conflict between those two because there literally is not enough time for both. I can't be with my wife and girls and be with other people. And the assumption is that there isn't enough time. So, how I resolve that assumption is I start to question, why do I need to spend a tremendous amount of time with other professionals to be productive? Why do I have to be in meeting after meeting? Why do I have to hold one meeting in order to hold another? So, the resolution to this cloud on the personal side is to find a way to make fewer meetings more productive, which creates the time I need to be with my family. So, from a decision making framework, I have to essentially figure out a way, whatever my tactics are, to do this. And by consequence, there are a lot of things that I can do that I don't because it doesn't fit within this resolution. Now, on the business side, which is the right side, my goal is to make money right now as a real estate marketing agency. In order to do that, I must generate immediate revenue for the company. So, in order to generate immediate revenue, I must charge as much as I possibly can for the services I provide. On the same token, in order to make money, I must create immediate revenue for my clients. And in order to create immediate revenue for my clients, I must charge as little as possible. I think you can see the conflict with that. The assumption is that real estate professionals won't pay me what I'm worth. They won't determine what I'm worth to be the same as what I do. So the resolution to that is I have to make and help real estate professionals see the value of their investment and see it as an investment and make sure that that value is clear. So again, from a decision-making framework, I now know what not to do versus what to do. Now, in the TOC world, we basically say a goal is meaningless if it doesn't have two necessary requirements. It doesn't exist within a vacuum. So this goal to be a happy and present father can't ever be met if I don't define the parameters of what it means to meet that goal. And the same with making money for the real estate industry. Goldratt in the book, It's Not Luck, said if you want to make money now and at any point in the day, open a bank late at night. Obviously, that's unrealistic. That's not the type of strategy we want to take. And so these two requirements basically define the parameters of how I ensure I meet that goal. Now, the other question is people will say, well, how do you measure that goal? You can define that in the process of doing this, but the measurement itself is not the goal. If you tell me how you measure me, I will tell you how I act. The measurement is a benchmark, and that's really about it. It is not the goal in and of itself. Now, that benchmark can increase, it can decrease. You can change those benchmarks as part of evaluating the scope of what that goal means, but it isn't the goal in and of itself. But using this framework together, I now identify a much larger conflict between the two. And that is nobody will want to pay me. Nobody will want to invest in their company so that I can be a happy present father. There is no monetizable value for my clients to meet this goal. There is no way for me to be happy and present if I can't make money. That conflict, therefore, forces me to question a set of assumptions around the idea of making my time far more valuable than it is now. So in other words, I have to answer the questions around if I do fewer things for my clients, how are they going to see the investment of their time and energy when so many assumptions on their part is tied up in the idea that time is money, when there is no inherent value to the minutes of our day. There is no inherent price. There is no inherent worth, especially to other people. So ultimately, the resolution I came up with was the 90-minute marketing department. defining a process for creating AI employees. And then I went one step further. I said, how can I, in a way that allows me to justify my value, create a process that is free for clients to see that anything they spend with us will immediately provide financial gains on their part. And that is why we came up with a process to, within an hour, provide far more business clarity to anybody, and compared to what sort of business clarity they get in the market now. And that's why you see live streams starting last week with real estate professionals like Sharon and Sean, and why we were able to help Chris out in Nevada do the same thing with the 3D printed homes. Because that is part of my business strategy to be creative and productive, and to have enough time with my wife and girls. See, those meetings are taking place when my wife is at work and my girls are at school. There's no conflict in that. And that allows me to be happy and present. And it allows me to generate immediate revenue, because when people pay for that sort of service, that immediate service allows me to charge prices that nobody else is willing to charge, because I can clearly demonstrate the value, and it doesn't put any burden on the part of potential clients, because they see the path to immediate revenue. They see the investment. Now, there are a lot of other things I can do. I can do free website builds or cheap website builds. I can teach free classes or provide free resources or lead magnets, whatever it is. But I can tell you, whatever I decide not to do is defined as much by this as deciding what to do. And I will tell you that this strategy here, the thing it doesn't tell me to do, is what most people would call be cheap. In other words, I'm not looking to cut costs. I'm not looking to get as many things as I possibly can for as cheap as I possibly can. In fact, I'm willing to pay above what other people are paying for the things that I absolutely need that fit within this strategic framework, because I want to make sure that I have them. But I'm also less willing to pay for things that don't help me satisfy any one of the necessary requirements or meet either one of the two goals that I have defined. And more than likely, if a particular tactic or strategy violates one, it likely violates all 6 of these blue entities you see here. Now, that makes it incredibly simple for me to run my business. It makes it incredibly simple for me to make decisions on whether or not this is good or this is bad. It makes it incredibly simple for me to make more money in less time, which is why it is I have time at 10:20 in the morning to run a live stream for 15 minutes about what my business strategy is. It makes it incredibly simple for me to share far more details about the way my business works than most other people are willing to share, because there's nothing here other than common sense. That's how simple things should be. Now, I will tell you, simple does not equal easy. Like I was telling Sean on the live stream earlier this week, a couple of days ago, easy is not what we are looking for. Simple is what we are looking for. Easy doesn't develop strength. You don't go to the gym to lift 5-pound weights for forever. You go to the gym to start with 5-pound weights, if that's where you have to start, to eventually work up the resistance and the strength to lift things that are heavier. It's the same sort of thing here. We want heavier lifts in business because heavier lifts mean more revenue in less time, more freedom to choose how you implement this strategy as the business matures and grows. But if you're not willing to evaluate a business decision from this perspective, as opposed to the list of tactics that you're deploying, you're always going to be stuck in that circle of being overworked for what you're not worth. Let me say that easier. You're going to be stuck in that cycle of being paid a whole lot less than you're worth and working a whole lot more than you have the energy or time for. You want that to be reversed. You want to always be paid what you're worth, and you want to figure out a way that you spend less time getting paid what you're worth to get what you need. This is how I do it. I'm willing to share this with anybody. And I'm willing to share it with anybody because this is how my life changed. Because 3 years ago, when I was running the direct mail business into the ground because I was just emotionally bankrupt and mentally bankrupt at that point, I didn't have a strategy. The strategy was do whatever it takes. That's not a strategy. That's desperation. And we know the end game of that. By June, I was so burned out. I had made so many bad decisions that business burned to the ground. And it's not because I'm unintelligent. It's not because I didn't work my ass off. It's not because I didn't know what to do. It's because after losing the old man, after Blair and I lost Robbie, I was spent. And because I didn't have a framework to make decisions, I certainly couldn't expect anyone else to help me make decisions because there was no way to describe to them what the framework was to make a good decision versus a bad one. If my mindset was work and do everything you have to do, then guess what? Everybody else was going to do what they thought they had to do to help. And it wasn't generally the right thing. And that was no fault of theirs. No fault of theirs whatsoever. So again, I'm going to continue to share this over and over and over until I'm going to continue to share inside of the 90mm. Right now, we're going through an entire process of the thinking processes that we employ in TOC to understand how to evaluate business and really decision-making struggles. I don't even want to call them business struggles, but decision-making struggles. Because the simplicity, not easy, the simplicity of it makes finding genuine, real, powerful, valuable solutions for everybody involved in the process entirely meaningful and accessible. Like anybody can do this. Absolutely anybody can do this. So if you have any questions during the live stream, I'm not seeing any comments, but if you have questions, put them below. I'll answer them. I'll provide more detail. I'll continue the conversation. But I want you to understand that business strategy doesn't have to be secretive. You can share it with the world. You can create a competitive advantage even when people know how you make decisions, because how you make decisions is common sense. It's logic. It's incredibly simple. This will help companies absolutely grow. We talk about business. If you're a capitalist like I am, your entire vision is to grow the size of the pie for everybody. This is how you do it. Everybody wins. 20 minutes. That's the discussion of the business strategy. It doesn't get more complicated than that. If you want a live stream, let me know. We'll do your business. We'll start the process of figuring out how to build this for yourself. That starts with identifying and understanding what the root cause of your struggles are. And I will tell you that I found my root cause to be centered on this. I didn't have a life built so that I could be a happy present father. That's my constraint in life and in my business enterprises, enterprises, whatever. This is it. So I had to build a system around my constraint. We'll help you find it. That's what the live streams are all about. Or if you have questions about this, let me know in the comments. Get connected to me anywhere at rob.leesix.com. That link is in the comments as well. And let's do it to it. Let's see what we